question. Does anyone here like robots? I should see 4 hands in the front here. Okay, that's 5 people in total, including the panel. Awesome. Who likes coffee? Does anyone like coffee? The drink, coffee? 2 people, 3. Excellent. Okay, so our next panel is all about coffee and robots. And I want to bring up our moderator now. She's a professor in the Electrical Engineering and Informatics Department at the University of Leibniz in Hanover. Please welcome ARMGARD von REDEN. ARMGARD, thanks for being with us today. You came prepared.
I came prepared.
And
Exactly.
Cube also came prepared. They have a video about this panel because it's one of our favorites. We hate to play favorites, but it's just true. Shall we take a look at the video?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That was already a very short introduction on what we're going to see. In fact, if you haven't seen the film Metropolis, I would highly recommend it. It's a wonderful film. Please, my panel, would you come on stage? I'd be delighted to introduce you. On my left is JADE LeMaitre. JADE is with HEASE Robotics. HEASE spelled H-E-A-E-S. So, but the French is HEASE, of course. And she's a co-founder and the chief technology officer of HEASE, and she's an engineer by profession. And she has just spent a couple of months building the first prototypes. So we are very, yes, we see it down there, but we don't see it up there. So we'll wait. But our panel is called Coffee with the Robots. This coffee was brought to me by myself and not by a robot. And the interesting thing is that that's the one thing we will always be asked first is, will we have a coffee that brings us, a robot that brings us the coffee? She lives in Lyon. And so we have a French participant. Next to her is Samantha PAYNE. She is the Chief Operating Officer and also co-founder of Open BIONICS. And Open BIONICS is specializing in producing and developing open source robotic hands. And it's really an interesting thing that what she does. She will show us some of the devices that she brought. She won several awards and acknowledgements on entrepreneurship, and she is born, raised, and based in Bristol, UK. On my very right is Lisa Winter. Lisa has been building robots since she was 10 years old. We can all think about what we did when we were 10. I tortured the neighbors with violin. And now she builds robots and battle bots. And she also works for MATTEL. She is based in Berkeley, California. And she still does play the violin. And we're interested in learning from her whether there will be ever a robot playing better than Nigel Kennedy. Needless to say, she has been also awarded many prizes for her work with robots. And so has ZHANG on my right here. She is the founder and CEO at ROBOTERRA. And she is also from Beijing and has a degree of the Central University there in finance and economics. She has a master's degree in education and economics from Columbia University. And she wants to put the fun back into the learning with robots. With this very short introduction, I'm still trying to see whether we managed to get one of the pictures that with the presentations up here. No? Okay, now it's completely gone. For whatever reason. Good. We will live without it. I would like to start with Jade, and she can please tell us quickly, in 3 minutes at the most, because we only have 40 minutes to begin with, on what her company does and what can we expect in the next 3 years from her. No, it will not a robot that serves us coffee, right?
Only if we partners with Nespresso. If we don't, the robot won't serve coffee. My dream was always to have robots interacting with humans in their daily life. I had two choices to fulfill this dream. Either I did build a robot to be in homes, and there were perhaps a dozen use cases for a robot at home. Play with your children, help you to cook, help you to clean, be a butler. Or, because that's not very interesting, I'd rather have a robot doing my tedious job than depriving me of my family and my home. So I wanted to put a robot in public places so that the robot will be useful to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. That's why I co-founded the company HEASE Robotics a few months ago in September, with the purpose of creating the robot that was perfect to deliver simple answers to simple questions in public places like airports or train stations or offices. Be a guide in offices, tell you which rooms are booked or not in a hotel, help you with restaurant reservation. Very, very tiny task and not difficult task for a robot at all. And we started the company in September. We started the company when we applied for the CES in Las Vegas. And the application was well received. And then after the application was well received, we had only 4 months to build a robot and ship it to Las Vegas. And we did it. We built a full functioning high-quality prototype. We went to Las Vegas and we had a tremendous success.
Great. And Jade, I will very much look forward to the time when a waiter robot will immediately detect when I want something. On this, Samantha, you have brought one of the devices with you, and we're very curious on you explaining to us what it is.
Okay, so I'm the co-founder of Open BIONICS, and my company creates low-cost robotic hands for amputees. These are fully 3D printed, and that manufacturing method allows us to make these incredibly accessible. We're really interested in changing the conversation around assistive devices. We want to make incredible robotic devices that make our lives easier and make our bodies stronger. We also want to make them look really cool. So like this arm we built for a 10-year-old girl who lost both of her hands to meningitis. Her name is Tilly. And she didn't want a human-colored hand that was pretending to be what we see as normal. She wanted to feel like a superhero. So we built her a bionic arm from the world of a video game, DSX. We also teamed up with the Walt Disney Company to create Iron Man bionic limbs for children and Star Wars Luke Skywalker hands. So yeah, we're using robotics in a really creative way to challenge and tackle disabilities.
Great. Lisa, since you started building robots at age 10, do the new robots look completely different from what you did, or did you start out with a ladybug fighting robot to turn things upside down?
Yeah, I think I've stuck with the theme of having a fun robot that's also deadly. So I've started with a doughboy robot, then created a ladybug robot, and I've brought today my tiny educational model because my real combat robots can sometimes be 5 feet wide, 250 pounds. So here you can see this is a ladybug. The shell lifts up and it goes down, captures the opponent, and then grinds them up inside. There's a drum spinner inside, and this is for BattleBots. So I do a lot of competing with BattleBots, Robot Wars, and for my full-time job, I work at Mattel as an engineering project manager.
I'm afraid you have to explain that there's a TV session or series in the United States where these play a key role, because show of hands, please. Does anybody know this type of? Oh.
Okay, so it's spread a bit, but yeah, BattleBots is a show that used to be on Comedy Central. Now it's on ABC, and it's spreading globally on smaller networks.
So for the digital dinosaurs, we will look it up on the internet.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yes. Okay, Zhao, please tell us, because we have 4 interesting, completely different phases or, so to speak, subjects of robotics on our panel.
Yes. So I'm not a robotic software or hardware engineer myself. I'm more from the data side. I did my actually PhD in applied econ, but looking at innovations in education. Why I'm doing that? Because myself, I always feel super fortunate that being able to attend the best schools and then receiving all the good opportunities. Among them, including all sorts of robotics competitions. So robotics and basically hands-on and building something is always the most engaging experiences I've had, especially on a team, working with other team members and everything. So after I actually started a first company in the educational technology, and then I moved to California and then met great co-founders there, former engineers from Google, Tesla, Apple, and then we started our this company, ROBOTERRA, in January 2014. So far, we're a company of more than 70 people and has been making modularized robotics hardware, and also the world's very first virtual robotic learning cloud, which is a software, teach kids 9 years old and above C coding. So yes. Programming in C is not privileges or skill sets only can be achieved by college level students, but we actually, through working really with cognitive scientists, computer scientists, and also a designer, that we basically developed our system to allow kids of 9 years old and above to code in C, which is a universal language, to program all sorts of hardware, of course, including robots, of any functions that they want to build. So far has been working with more than 500 schools in more than 30 countries. So very happy to be here.
Great, thank you very much. Now let's come back for a moment to the theme of our panel, and that is coffee with the robots. And the one thing that I would like to ask you, no, we will not have in the near future robots serving us coffee, but what are the most, so to speak, humane or unique things that robots will absolutely not be able to do? And on top of it, what are the things that you consider the most difficult when designing robots? Samantha, you want to start? And I pass my microphone on to somebody else because a moderator has to be as silent as possible.
So this question comes up in the media a lot, and it's one of my not so favorite questions to be asked by journalists, and that is, when are robots going to take all of our jobs? And there's like this real horror story that's perpetuated in the news, that robots are going to displace everyone's jobs, and no one is safe, and no one has the potential to earn any money, and we're all going to starve and lose our houses. That's not the future, and everyone has this sci-fi idea of where robotics is right now, or the state-of-the-art robotics. And there are just so many challenges in robotics that haven't been solved yet. And in my industry, it's dexterity. So one of the biggest robotics challenges is making robot hands that are dexterous enough and strong enough to handle lots of different objects. And this is the same for a medical case, so for amputees, so for prosthetics. These prosthetics don't have a sense of touch, and they're not incredibly strong. And it's the same for the robotics industry, where you have big robot arms with grippers. They need to be able to manipulate very small objects, but they can't handle these objects, and they don't have the wrist and the flexibility, they don't have the sense of touch, and they don't have the vision. So this idea that we're all going to lose our jobs very quickly is completely false. The area where robots can do the most good is the areas in industries that we don't want to work. Robots are here to sort of make our lives easier. So jobs that are really repetitive and laborious. Robots like working in predictive environments, in constrained environments. And this is where they can do the most good.
I will add that the unique feature of the human body and the human mind is the versatility. We can learn new abilities very fast, very quick. A robot cannot. For example, my robot is designed for public spaces, and the robot is designed to answer very simple question. The robot has no vocal recognition. You cannot speak to the robot because in this environment, speaking to the robot is impossible because it's noisy, it's lousy, it's very complicated, people from different languages and so on. So my robot, you put it in another environment, it becomes completely stupid. But it's designed like that because a robot, the function of a robot should fit the form of the robot. And because we're human, we are very versatile and we can do just anything we want. And the things we just cannot do yet, we just have to learn. And that's why we have universities and everything to accompany us.
I agree 100% on all of that. And I also think it's not only jobs that we don't want to have, but it's jobs that we can't do or are too dangerous, like in disaster relief, going through small holes, like the snake robot that can go through pipes and climb up poles and stuff like that. And also, there's something like you were mentioning about human and how it's just so hard to create the human body. And it's so hard to be to talk to humans in a way that we respect or feel comfortable with. So I think robots are really good at being robots and having a robotic form, not being bipedal, being exactly like made for the function, like you were saying.
I would add that some part of roboticists want to create robots that mimic the human form because for them, the robot would be more efficient if the robot is like a human because the world is designed for humans. But humans are so complex and wanted to create a robot formed like a human is a form of hubris. It's very difficult for us to say, okay, the human form is the best in the universe, so we will create only robots based on the human form. It's completely stupid. Really.
Exactly. So the world is human-centric, and so I actually believe that robots have a way harder time than we believe currently, like in the movies. Like, they're the ones that are having the tricky time because all of the cars are shaped for humans, all the doorways are shaped for humans, these cups are very hard for robots to grab, so they have a difficult time.
So my design students should start to design cups for robots, which makes it easier for the robots
Yes.
to grip them. So I understand now I have a future as a teacher and will not be replaced by a robot immediately. Is this how I have to look at it, Joe?
Well, you know, for the space ROBOTERRA is working in, we make educational robotics. Robots are not the results or the product there to replace teachers, but it's more of a process. We use both the hardware and also the software assembly experience to guide students in a gamified way so that kids, so far, for us, it's 9 years old and above, all the way into college level, that they work in groups, they build something together, and then they actually are defining the functions of robots that they are seeing can solve some problems in their life. One quick example that, we were so proud of the students, a 14 years old little boy with this modularized kit. So many other kids, they just use that to make a racing car. But this boy, after he learned how to program controller board and also sensors, he actually add the motors on the curtains in his home because he doesn't like to wake up early. But now he has actually an autonomous curtain opener in the morning. He just swipe on his phone and then the curtain opens. That is an application of actually a robotic structure at home.
I buy that immediately. I don't like to wake up in the morning. Let's get out the tough questions at the beginning, and then we have time for the fun questions, and then we have time, hopefully, for some questions from the audience. A couple of months ago, Bill Gates, the European Parliament, and others have discussed the topic that we should have a robot tax. Robots should pay taxes because they take the work away, and when humans work, they pay taxes as well. We know about that in Germany. And so what they discussed and what they proposed were robot taxes. I don't know how robots can pay, but probably they can be taught to pay as well. So on this happy issue, who would like to start on robot tax?
I come from one of the countries that pays a lot more taxes than the other countries. I'm so angry with that because this quote comes from a man who designed a software, Microsoft Excel, that took the jobs of hundreds of accountants. If robots are going to pay taxes, why does the software industry pay any of these taxes except the VAT, value-added taxes? We all pay value-added taxes on our products, and it's a tax that relies heavily on the buyer. And if my robot, that the VAT applies to my robot, if I should add another tax to that, nobody would buy my robot. It wouldn't be competitive at all, and this tax would kill an entire industry that is going to reshape your future and reshape a brighter future.
That's a really controversial question to a full panel of hardware robotics engineers. So I think it's more of a matter of upskilling workers. So it's not that robots are going to completely displace jobs and therefore robotiers should be taxed. It should be that employers retrain staff to work alongside robots. So robots will still need human engineers who are building the robots, who are programming the robots, who are managing these fleets. There's still going to be jobs, and there's going to be more job creation. It's not just a case of we introduce robots and therefore we have no jobs left for humans.
Exactly. There's going to be way more jobs. I mean, ever since robotics came out, you know, Spark, Fun, Adafruit, we're all building stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I felt initially angry when I saw that YouTube video. I was like, wait, why are you so like anti-robot, you know, trying to tax them? You know, they don't even, like, if they had feelings, they would feel really sad right now. But yeah, I think, I don't
I mean, you know, as someone actually trained in applied, you know, economics and then working in the robotic industry, I believe Mr. Gates' intention is good-willed. He is looking at the population that's going to be affected by the job loss because of robotic replacement, right, in the dangerous or hard sectors. So tax itself is always about wealth redistribution. So I think whether it's as entrepreneurs or policymakers, yes, indeed, we should look at the impact of upgraded automation to our society and what impact will be on which group of populations, so that we can do retraining and also we can use proper tax reforms to actually help the people affected. So I'm not too angry about that, but I definitely think we should all be part of the discussion.
I would love to see policymakers actually discuss automation. So there's like a video going viral recently of the burger flippy robot. So like these robots are going to be in McDonald's and they're going to be taking loads of like young teenagers' jobs flipping burgers. And I felt a bit bad about it because as a student, I can see all these young people in McDonald's and KFC in the fast food industry trying to earn money to pay for their tuition fees, and they're going to be replaced by these burger flipping robots. So I think there is something that has to be addressed there, but you don't see it happening. Like politicians in the UK, for example, the biggest news story last week for our government was the Prime Minister, Theresa May, wants to reintroduce fox hunting. Like, we have a general election coming up, and no one's talking about jobs or automation or things that are happening and coming really quickly. So let's have a discussion about it, and let's hold governments accountable for it.
Just wait until the fox are hunted by the robots. That was going to be fun.
Just to add my 2 cents, for me, tuition shouldn't be so high. You shouldn't pay so high for education. It's a wheel that is endless. Students have high tuition fees and they need low-cost jobs for that. But these jobs are going to be taken by robots because these are dumb jobs, robot jobs, and shouldn't be student jobs.
But it's old. They're old jobs, in my opinion. We need to like, with every revolution of technology and innovation, like there's new jobs and new industries being born. So there needs to be new training. And I think having, if there's a high tax on robotics, I don't know how much tax he wants, but if robots cost more, that's going to sort of stifle innovation.
Speaking of jobs, who here and in the audience can explain just in 3 words his job to his grandmother or grandfather? Not a lot of people, I think. Raise your hands if you can explain your job to your grandmother or grandfather with only 3 words. Okay. So we have jobs that didn't exist 25 years ago. That's incredible, and I think that makes a point.
Yeah, and that also brings us to another question of how are you trained for these jobs? Needless to say, because if you think of universities, and not only universities, but by the time you make a decision on your job, I mean, Lisa is an exception, knowing at age 10 that she wanted to design computers. But if I talk to my students and ask them which job has been recommended to you, then I hardly ever heard something in the area of informatics and electronical engineering. Is that the same all over the world? And
I would say, I mean, it's a bit different. Like, for me, this was a hobby, and I saw robot combat as, it wasn't around. Actually, I started in the 3rd year of Robot Wars in San Francisco, California. And I thought, oh, this is fun. There's 10 people in a room, and we're putting chainsaws on RC cars, right? Like, it's destruction, there's sparks, it's fun. So it didn't really turn into a career, like, until 20 years later.
But let's have a quick round. When you were taking your A-levels, your maternity, did anybody recommend to you to become an engineer, study?
No, I actually was really late to the robotics fun train. I only got involved 3 years ago, and I found my way into robotics through maker spaces and 3D printing. So 3D printing was like really accessible, really easy way to make something, really easy way to prototype something, really easy way to build a product when you want to get an idea, a concept, and you can just print little pieces and components and build them really easily. For the younger generations now, I don't feel worried for them when it comes to jobs, because humans are incredibly creative. One of the things that we will always have over robots is our ability to be creative and ingenious. And we have ideas and we can apply those ideas. Robots are really good for like data processing. They're not good for empathizing. As a doctor, as a teacher, as a nurse, robots really struggle with those tasks. They don't have those subtle gestures that humans do. So I'm not really worried about it, but I think a really strong career would be either something in the creative industries or a computer scientist, engineer.
Do you want to add something?
Yeah, my teacher wanted me to become another teacher, and perhaps in language. Nothing scientific at all. That's why I was passionate by science since I was like 5 or 6. The first time I went skiing in the mountain, I didn't look at the mountain. I looked at all the pieces of engineered arts that moved people on top of the mountain.
That's another way to discover the mountains. You're absolutely right. Now, let's come to the easy questions, right? And one of the easy questions, which will be on the ethics. Which ethical questions have we addressed with designing computers? Which have we not yet addressed because of the future development of computers? And Lisa and I were discussing that before. And Lisa, I would want to ask you first. You made an interesting distinction between artificial general intelligence and artificial intelligence, and that's the way to tell a robot to rob a bank, or the robot decides by himself to rob a bank.
I guess that was my example.
What are the ethical things where you say this is really what we need to address as society?
Well, yeah, so just to give some brief definitions, so AI, in my belief, is when a human basically codes the robot to, if this, then that. So if you run into an object, turn right 90 degrees. AGI, artificial general intelligence, is really just starting to happen recently, and it's where robots are. They're almost, it's like a baby. So they are birthed, they are built by a human, most likely, but their brain develops by them learning around the world and seeing things for themselves and deciding based on their sensors how the world works and how to interact with it. So I feel like AGI, we'll be able to see AGI if they have their own opinions, their own emotions, and ultimately, when robots have their own hobbies, is really the ultimate showing of AGI. And only in that situation is when they would need their own ethics or like laws and all of that.
Because you mentioned on artificial intelligence, so I just want to add on that. Naturally, AI and also robotics, which is the physical structure that, or the kinetic structure that can shape physical environment around, hard to separate, right? They can always work together, AI being the brain part of it, and then controlling other mechanical parts. So later last year, there's a disaster happened on Wall Street, which was a lot of high-frequency trading firms. Their algorithms are basically AI-based, right? So there was one day just, like plumbing of everything, and nobody knows what happened. And then people realized it's AI trading with AI, so human traders even has no way to stop that because things are just happening. So I think that's a very good example of the dangers of actually algorithms that we human programmers or product designers wrote. So if those algorithms will be able to control the kinetic structures that can shape physical environment, then, for example, unmanned drone flying around but carrying weapons. So things like this are definitely very high stake because it has direct impact on human safety and lives. I think this is, so basically safety and also even data security, these are the sectors that we definitely need international bodies to work together and then watch that out.
We have already the European Robotics Research Network and things and different groups working on this. So will we need something like a worldwide charter on artificial general intelligence, on robots, on how they are supposed to behave or not to behave? And is it realistic, or are the geographical differences so large that something like this will never come into existence? Like you mentioned, data privacy or privacy, as you would say. We have the same problem there. The differences are so large that might be cause a problem for an international charter that is the same all over the net.
I mean, I think you can just look at humans, like, it's not the same in every country, and we don't have a universal decision. But if there was AGI with robots, they would be more intelligent than us. But you can definitely use our laws and ethics as an example to begin with.
I think I disagree a tiny bit with Lisa. So I don't think we should let the robots have general intelligence and then think about ethics. I think we should be way more proactive in thinking about, okay, we need to be ethical. There need to be some boundaries before we start building these robots. There's already been accounts of like AI systems picking up racial bias and sexism and that being built in, and then they teach other systems racial bias. So it's too late to build a system, have it run a task, and then be like, oh, actually, that's really unethical. I think we should there should be some board. Usually I'm well against like rules and regulations because it seems like a really big impediment on innovation. It takes way longer for people to actually build stuff. But in this case where it works so quickly and the industry is going so quickly, I think there has to be some sort of ethical consideration beforehand.
Yeah, I guess I agree. I didn't really mean in that order, but I haven't seen any good examples or any examples of AGI actually working yet, so I'm not sure how close we are to it. But I would agree to be careful before that happens.
The debate that we are having right now is the same that we had on the internet a few years ago. Internet was absolutely not designed with privacy in mind, with security in mind. And so we had to build pet shops to enhance this part on the internet, and we had to make laws, but way after internet was in every home, so laws didn't work at all. To regulate the internet is a nonsense. So if you want to have an ethical robotics, because robotics will be in every home and every office in 15 years, in every road with autonomous cars and buses. If you want to have a robotics that respects every people, disregarding the gender and age and ability or not of the people, if you want to have that, if we want to shape the future in the best way possible, then we have to think of it right now.
There was a panel earlier today, IoT in the future 50 years. People are saying it's impossible to predict, right? In some way, it's just impossible to predict how AI and robotics-based world will be like in the future 20 years. We do know that, right, NASA and also many other space administrations are aiming to put humans on Mars in 20 years. However, when we're talking about the regulations about AI on planet Earth, I want to ask this question. So who will be the future, the upcoming programmers, the upcoming project managers that's going to write all the codes for the AIs, that's going to make all the products at that time, right? It will still be us, it will still be humans. Yes, there probably will be AI-made AI, but if we want to make very inclusive future technological infrastructure, we actually need to start from including everyone to be able to have that ability to be part of that development process. For example, it would be great if we can have more female engineers everywhere in all sorts of domains. If we can have more, people from all sorts of backgrounds, all different culture backgrounds, to be able to develop systems that is able to work for everyone. So that's why ROBOTERRA again is working in education, because we want to make that accessible to all kids.
But that brings us to a second question, which is related to the ethics question. And I don't know whether I'm right, but I sensed a slight, so to speak, European versus the United States way of addressing these problems. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but Europeans always like to have organizations and buildings who think ahead on how can we get out of the mess. Because we were thinking of atomic bombs, etc. So one of the things that is related to the ethic questions is the question of data protection. You already mentioned inclusion, but also, you mentioned robotics, so to speak, or robots teaching other robots to be discriminatory, etc. So actually, the one thing is who owns the data that the robots generate, because we have this question right now in autonomous driving, etc., which is maybe one form of robots as well. So who owns the data, and which are the privacy issues you have run into so far when you designed your robots? These are yours, are completely independent and own their own data, but the rest might have some issues with this.
Yeah, I think some of us here is the robot, I don't have any data privacy issues or collection. I use my transmitter. I'm not collecting any data, although at my full-time job at MATTEL, we are collecting data on millions of babies once we start selling. But yeah, so with combat robots, it's fully inclusive. We don't have that problem.
I have some issues because my robot will meet hundreds of people in public places every day. So in France, we have a public institution that is very strong only on this matter of protecting the data collected on people. It's called the CNIL, C-N-I-L. It's the National Council of I don't know what. Oh, thank you so much. You're better than me. So, information legal. We wanted to have a robot that doesn't store the data, the images, because the robot has cameras to know where it is and to look at people and to know what kind of people are facing the robot, if it's a male or a female, if it's a child, an adult, elderly people. And we designed it so that the robot doesn't store the images, but only has a file, a database of what the robot generated from data from these images. For example, at 9 p.m. Yesterday, the robot saw a male around 50, 55 years. That's all. And this data has to belong to us, and we cannot yet, what can I say? We cannot yet sell this data without asking the customer, the person standing in front of the robot, for his agreement. That is very strong in France. But if the robot is in America, then it's okay. So legal issues are depending on the countries, and it's like the internet. And it's the biggest problem for us so far.
So we don't collect any data, and it's a completely wireless independent device, so we don't have any data protection issues. One area in data that I find really depressing is that, so like the big giants like Facebook and Google, they have tons of data about us. And like Facebook are using this data to keep us on their pages like 10 minutes longer. So they hire like the best software engineers, the brightest minds in engineering to go to Facebook, and all they're doing is using our data to try and figure out how they can appeal to us to keep us on their site for like 5 more minutes. And it's really depressing. There are so many social challenges that these engineers could be working on. These are the best engineers in the world, and they're just focusing on advertising and like viral rubbish videos, and they could be building exceptional products that really help people and change lives. And no, I don't think anyone's talking about that.
Right. That brings us to a very good last round. You just started it off, and I would ask each and every one of you to say in a couple of words, because you're all entrepreneurs, you're all in a very interesting area. What are your American friends would say pain points, or your biggest challenges at the moment? So everybody for 50 seconds, please. Lisa, do you want to? Oh, yeah, start.
I'll just start. Yeah, so because we work in educational robotics space, we're seeing, of course, education worldwide is a sector that's lagging behind in terms of adopting technology actively, or a lot of technologies are just not work for the best interest for the students, which is for better learning, and also that needs better teaching as well. So our team is working hard with the best talents we have to design the great software and also hardware systems to facilitate better teaching and also learning, so that all the students can really enjoy the learning process.
Yeah, on the topic of robotics and combat, I think it's also sort of the personal pain point is finding enough time to do this when it's a hobby, and it's not something that really makes money when you want to destroy robots for fun. But then trying to get other girls involved and interested, you really need a lot of time on social media. You need to get on TV and show that this is fun. And so I've been making YouTube videos about how to build a robot, because I think a lot of people see a robot, maybe not a ladybug, but a factory robot, and it looks really complicated. Or how do I get into this? Like a robot, I could never build this. So I'm trying to make it very simple on YouTube.
One of our biggest pain points in the medical industry is getting healthcare systems to adopt new technologies really quickly. BIONICS is really lucky. We got a product development contract with the National Health Service in the UK, which means we can give these devices to patients in a clinical trial. But it takes a really long time to introduce new technologies to healthcare, even if they're proven to be very beneficial for the patient.
Okay, and for me, the biggest challenge ever, my company is very young, we're 12 people. Biggest challenge will be to recruit a diverse team, not only in terms of female and male, but also from country of origin. If I want my company to be global, to address the global market, I cannot hire only French people. even if we have a super cute accent when talking in English. I have to hire people from different countries and different origins. And hiring good people takes time. And we are a small team, so hiring good people takes too much time, but we need to take that time to make the team progress. And it's never ending. But it's quite a challenge, and I loved this challenge.
Thank you very much on the panel. I was delighted to, it was a pleasure being with you here. I hope you take a new look in the audience at robotics and the interesting side that come with it. On this happy note, unfortunately, we ran out of time and don't have time for questions. Next year. So.
All right, a big round of applause for our panel on robotics. Thank you.